Ari Shalom. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shah, Bahasham, and Kakadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. And it's just Shalom to the Akim out here that's doing again, pushing this work in truth and in sincerity. I want to go on this video that Esau, which is the so-called white man, has not been a faithful steward of the earth. Okay, and we got the definition of the word steward, right? A steward is a person responsible for managing, supervising, or protecting something that belongs to another, such as property, finances, or a household. They act as caretakers or administrators with roles ranging from service staff on ships, planes, to managers or of large estates, or in a broader sense, guardians of resources like the environment. Okay? So, you got animals that are, going extinct because of this guy, and, they, try to preserve certain, things because of, the way that this earth has been managed. Okay? So, we're going to go into the scriptures. Okay? Habakkuk 2:1. And it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower. It says, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but that at the end it shall speak, and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. And we are, at the time, okay, of seeing, this man and his rulership go down. Okay? His management skills, poor management skills, which he's, they were created to be this way. They were created to be the wicked. The scriptures talk about Proverbs 16:4. The Lord created all things for himself, even the wicked for the day of evil. Okay? So they was created for this, okay? To do these, wicked, acts that they're doing to the planet, okay, and the people, the inhabitants on the planet, okay? In particular, the Israelites, okay, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But for Esau, and, he's supposed to know better. These people are supposed to be people who claim to be believers of the Bible and everything like that. Claim them to be, God's chosen people even, okay? And, look at what they're doing. Okay, the earth is not at rest. The earth is not at peace. There's war going on. Okay? It says, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Okay? Yeah, also, because he transgresses by wine, which is philosophy. Okay? It says, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlarges his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathers unto him all nations, and heaps unto him all people. Okay? So, when you look at the state and the condition of what's going on right now, the so-called white man is, this land, America, which is known as Babylon the Great, this was a bountiful land. It had resources. The Northern Kingdom, okay, they came over here and they saw, what they thought was, good land, okay? So they set up shop over here, and then the so-called white man came over here, and took it from him. Okay, and brought the rest of the tribes of Israel over here and tried to put them in captivity. Okay, so now here we are in this country. Okay, and we scattered throughout the whole world. Okay, but now here we are in this country, and they worried about the foreign affairs, the foreign policy, and the reasons why of getting into it, getting in between it, you know. A lot of people have the mindset of they don't want to fight for Israel, the country Israel, and it's like, what does Israel do for this country? What do they do? When you really look at it, they own this country, okay, and literally every aspect, okay. In America, sends their money off to Israel, okay, the small hats, okay, and they in subjection onto them, okay. So now they got people, they got this country in a war, okay, right now with Iran, okay, if you didn't know, which everybody should know that. And then they lying about what's actually going on, okay. But the thing is that America is so focused on all the things on the other parts of the world, but when it comes down to the things that's inside of their own country, they're not even worried about fixing. The war is costing America, okay, and the citizens here in this country are left to deal with the consequences of that. Okay, gas prices going up, the potholes and everything in the street, the infrastructure just being bad, but we're supposed to just deal with it, okay, while they out there trying to do whatever in these other countries, going to war and fighting these other countries for what? What is the purpose? Is it to try to keep things going? Who knows? It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his. Okay, and that's one of the things that is really going on, because people was like, okay, well, what happened in Venezuela? They going there for their resources. What's going on over there in Iran? They want resources or whatever. Or, they'll make up these stories and lies about we're over there for these different reasons. When you have no business over there. Okay, but woe, judgment is coming, okay, to that person that is trying to increase that which is not his. They're trying to increase the resources. They're trying to do these things, right? It says, and to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Okay, go into that. That's the depth that this place is in. Okay, because this war is creating even more depth. Okay, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite you, and awake that shall vex you, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? It says, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Right? And this is what's going to happen. You're going to have civil war. You're going to have a lot of different, atrocities happening here in this country. Okay, you're going to have famine, okay, cannibalism, okay, people getting evicted, all different types of stuff, man. Okay, people getting put to death. Okay, it says, woe to him that covetous and evil covetousness, okay, to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou shalt be consulted. Thou hast consulted shame to your house. by cutting off many people, and has sinned against thy soul. So they out here fighting these other, nations and cutting them off. Okay, and this, especially mainly the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Okay, you definitely cut our people off from being a nation. Okay, now we don't have nowhere in the world as Israelites that we can actually go to, following what's inside of the Bible, having a leader and everything like that. Because first off, it's the curses. We sinned against the Lord, and when the Lord returns, Yahweh Shah, okay, the one in the world we call Jesus, okay, he's going set up his people, okay, to where they're never going to go off anymore, okay. They're going to be good. They're going to be protected, okay. He's going to be along with King David, and the rest of the men of the Lord. They're going to be the leaders on the planet Earth. Okay. So thou hast consulted, saying to thy house by cutting off many people, and has sinned against thy soul. Okay, so all of this stuff of being a bad steward, killing people, was they're going to continue to do until they get taken out the way. Okay, because they sinning against their soul. Okay, it says for the stone cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the temple, so answer it. It says, woe to him that builds a town with blood, and establisheth a city by iniquity. Okay, and that's what they did with this country. Okay, they're taking out these leaders in these other countries. They trying to build them back up. By you kill the people. Now you wanna set up shop over there. And you want to bring that wicked American bull crap over there. Okay. It says, behold, is it not of the Lord of hosts, which is the Lord of armies, that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for very vanity? For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the Lord, the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Right? So the whole world is going to know, who the Most High is, okay, who his servants are, okay, and everybody on the world is, going to be in subjection, and ain't going to be you following your own God, because now the so-called white man, everybody allowed to just believe whatever they want to believe, and they okay with that, because they able to stay in power that way, okay. It says, woe unto him that gives his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Okay, and that, when you look at our people, that's the condition that our people are in. Okay, you're drunk off of that Babylonian philosophy. That and our people, if you still believing in this American dream, believing anything can come right out of this man, Esau, okay, the so-called white people line goes back to Esau. Where did they ever show that they were, brotherly, or did they care about you? That just shows you the stupidity of our people. Okay, that they, come here to this place, have Stockholm syndrome, and somehow, some way, this man, which he hasn't shown that he's righteous whatsoever, he got a chance now. He got a chance to clean up his ways. It's good. Ain't no such thing as a good Edomite. Okay? But they can't made us come over here, and they, look at the condition that we in, man. You know, we don't have any resources. We don't have nothing. You know, you barely got a backyard for some people. Some people don't even got a backyard. You know, some people got to share, other places, other things with other people, man. And then you want to call that living. And then when those people who sharing those, small apartments with other people and stuff like that, you be paying a hell of money, rather than having an inheritance or something that you can pass on down to your people, man. Okay? It says, thou art filled with shame for glory. And look at the disgraceful things that this man has done throughout the world, throughout history. Okay? You think that they just set up these embassies and all that stuff? No, this place has been in, war since its inception. Okay? So therefore, when this place, when it's time for it to go down, they're going to get thrown down because that's the only way that it knows. Okay? It says, drink thou also, and let your foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned onto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on your glory. Okay? For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts, which made them afraid because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. They haven't been a good steward, man. And it's rightfully so that their rulership is going to get taken out. I got this last scripture. Okay. This is Ecclesiastes 10:8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. And Esau, your rulership is going to go down for those reasons. Okay? You're lying about who you actually are. Okay? We know according to the Bible that you're Esau. And Esau's judgment is to be destroyed. Okay? So with that, Lord willing, this is edifying. I want to say shalom until next time.